In 1999, a businessman named Dan Snyder bought the Washington Redskins for $800 million. However, under his ownership, the team went from being a Super Bowl contender to a mess Magic Johnson ended up acquiring for pennies in 2023. So, how did this happen? Subscribe for the story of the worst owner in the NFL history. In 1999, Dan Snyder bought the Washington Redskins, instantly becoming the youngest owner in the NFL at 34 years old. Snyder, a lifelong Washington fan, was entering a situation that seemed promising on the surface. The team had a respectable foundation, including head coach Norv Turner. Turner had been working with Washington since 1994, aiming to restore the team's former glory after the departure of legendary coach Joe Gibbs. Although Turner hadn't yet brought playoff success, he had laid some groundwork, finishing the 1998 season with a 6-10 record and a core of promising players. Washington was also fresh off an exciting draft, thanks to a trade that saw them swindle the New Orleans Saints out of 8 draft picks so they could select Ricky Williams. Washington finished the 1999 season with a 10-6 record, winning the NFC East for the first time in years. Veteran quarterback Brad Johnson, who threw for over 4,000 yards that season, was instrumental in leading the offense, and running back Stephen Davis emerged as a force on the ground, rushing for 1,400 yards and 17 touchdowns. Turner's efforts paid off, and Washington entered the playoffs with a solid team, earning a wild-card win over the Detroit Lions. However, they fell short against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the divisional round, ending a season that many saw as a significant improvement and a stepping stone toward bigger success. But Snyder didn't see it that way. He was unsatisfied with anything short of a Super Bowl, and instead of letting Turner build on the foundation he'd laid, Snyder chose to meddle in football decisions. That led to a clash with Turner, creating tension within the team. What an absolute delusion. By mid-season in 2000, with Washington sitting at 7-6, Snyder made a shocking move by firing Turner. This firing marked the start of Snyder's reputation as an owner who wouldn't hesitate to make impulsive decisions, regardless of how disruptive they might be on the team's stability. Snyder's approach to ownership was heavily driven by his belief that star power and big names could quickly elevate the Washington franchise. From Hall of Famers to flashy coaches, Snyder was willing to open his wallet and take risks, even if it meant ignoring key areas of team building. After firing Norv Turner, Snyder looked to make an immediate splash by signing several aging NFL stars, hoping their veteran presence could bring instant success. Among these signings was Dan Snyder, one of the greatest cornerbacks in NFL history. Sanders was brought in on a jaw-dropping 7-year, $56 million contract. At age 32, Sanders was already well past his prime, and although he played a full season in Washington, he retired after just 1 year, keeping his $8 million signing bonus without delivering the expected impact. Alongside Sanders, Snyder also signed Bruce Smith, a defensive legend and the NFL's all-time sack leader, who was already 37 when he joined the team. Along with Sanders and Smith, Snyder signed quarterback Jeff George, another head-scratching move in my opinion. George had shown flashes of talent but was known for his inconsistency and issues with leadership. Washington paid him $18 million for 4 years, only to bench him after a rocky start and releasing him after 2 games, not completing the contract term. Replacing Coach Turner with Eric Robisky did little to save the season. Washington finished 8-8, missing the playoffs, and what had been a promising team quickly slipped into mediocrity. After the disappointing 2000 season, Snyder turned to legendary coach Marty Schottenheimer, a proven winner known for his disciplined approach and focus on fundamentals. From the beginning, Schottenheimer demanded full control over football operations, and for a brief moment, it seemed like Snyder might let a seasoned football mind take the reins. Schottenheimer immediately overhauled the team culture, emphasizing hard work and discipline. However, Snyder's patience was quickly tested when the team stumbled to an 0-5 start in 2001. To Schottenheimer's credit, he turned things around dramatically after the slow start, guiding Washington to the season end at 8-8. The strong finish showed Schottenheimer's ability to inspire resilience and stability in a team that had been plagued by Snyder's constant interference. But even though the team improved, Snyder was frustrated with Schottenheimer's hard-nosed style and lack of flexibility in letting the owner have a say in the team's decisions, as if Snyder had any coaching or football experience. Honestly, why would you listen to a guy who became rich selling blenders to housewives and telemarketing channels? Despite the team's late-season success, Snyder shocked everybody by firing Schottenheimer after just 1 season. In 2002, Snyder hired Steve Spurrier, a college football legend, fresh off success at the University of Florida. Spurrier was known for his high-powered fun-and-gun offense, which had been wildly successful in college ranks, but had yet to be tested in the NFL. Snyder handed Spurrier a 5-year, $25 million contract, one of the highest coaching salaries in the league at the time, signaling his commitment to an offensive revolution. As you might expect, Spurrier's first season in 2002 was all over the place. He experimented with a quarterback carousel, featuring former Florida Gators Danny Werfel and Shane Matthews, neither of whom could effectively run an NFL offense. Washington finished with a disappointing 7-9 record, and Spurrier quickly found himself in over his head. Despite his confidence and offensive reputation, he failed to make the necessary adjustments, and his style seemed out of place in the NFL, as it proved ineffective against NFL defenses. By the end of 2003, Spurrier resigned after back-to-back losing seasons, going 12-20 on his short stint with the team. His hiring was an experiment that backfired, showing Snyder's willingness to throw money at a problem without considering whether a college coach's style could succeed at NFL level. The failed experiments with Schottenheimer and Spurrier emphasized Snyder's lack of a cohesive long-term plan as an owner. By 2003, it was painfully clear that spending big without building a strong organizational foundation wasn't enough to bring sustained success to Washington. So Snyder decided to bring the legend of football coaching back. In 2004, Washington fans received exciting news. Legendary coach Joe Gibbs would return to lead the team. For fans, Gibbs was a hero. In his first stint with Washington from 1981 to 1992, Gibbs transformed the team into a powerhouse, winning 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks, an accomplishment unmatched by any other NFL head coach. After his departure, Washington struggled to find its identity, going through a revolving door of coaches with little success. Dan Snyder offered Gibbs full control over football operations. This decision was significant because it showed Snyder's willingness, at least temporarily, to let a respected football mind run the show. With Gibbs back, the expectations were sky high. The idea was simple. If anyone could restore the team to greatness, it was Joe Gibbs. One of the first things Gibbs did was look for stability at quarterback. The team had cycled through numerous quarterbacks since he left, and this inconsistency had taken a toll. Gibbs turned to veteran Mark Brunell, signing him to a 7-year, $43 million deal, a significant commitment at the time. Brunell had shown flashes of success with the Jacksonville Jaguars, but his best years were arguably behind him. Gibbs saw him as a steady hand, someone who could manage the game and execute the coach's run-heavy, conservative offensive philosophy. However, Brunell struggled in his first season, managing just 1,194 passing yards with 7 touchdowns and 6 interceptions in 9 starts, which led to his eventual benching for Patrick Ramsey. Despite the issues with quarterback, Gibbs focused on defense next. The results were immediate. The defense ranked 3rd in the NFL, a major improvement for a team that had been inconsistent on that side of the ball. The defensive success was led by Greg Williams, whom Gibbs hired as his defensive coordinator. Williams implemented an aggressive, hard-hitting style that suited Washington's roster well. Players like LeVar Arrington and Sean Taylor became cornerstones of the unit, showing the kind of dominant defense Gibbs had always been known for. Sean Taylor, Washington's 5th overall pick in the 2004 draft, quickly made a name for himself in his physical play. Taylor embodied the spirit of Gibbs' new defense, tough, relentless, and unafraid to make big plays. However, Washington finished the season ranked 30th in scoring offense, averaging just 15 points per game. This low production raised questions about whether Gibbs' style, which worked in the 80s and early 90s, could adapt to the faster, more pass-oriented NFL of the 2000s. The 2005 season was a turning point. With Mark Brunell as the full-time starter, Washington's offense improved significantly. Brunell rediscovered his form, throwing for over 3,000 yards and 23 touchdowns. His chemistry with wide receiver Santana Moss was a revelation, as Moss delivered a career-best season with 1,483 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns, including a legendary performance in a Monday Night Football comeback against the Dallas Cowboys. For much of the game, both defenses dominated. The Cowboys managed to score through 2 field goals and a 70-yard touchdown pass from Drew Bledsoe to Terry Glenn, leading 13-0. Trailing 13-0 late in the 4th quarter, the Redskins orchestrated a stunning comeback. With just 4 minutes remaining, Redskins quarterback Mark Brunell connected with wide receiver Santana Moss for a 39-yard touchdown on a 4th and 15 play, narrowing the deficit to 13-7. Shortly after, Brunell and Moss struck again with a 70-yard touchdown pass, exploiting a breakdown in the Cowboys' secondary. This score followed by a successful extra point gave Washington a 14-13 lead. The Redskins defense held firm in the final minutes, preventing the Cowboys from mounting a counter comeback and securing the victory. The game is celebrated as one of the most dramatic comebacks in Monday Night Football history, highlighting the excellence of the 2005 Redskins. The defense remained stout, once again ranked in the top 10 under Greg Williams' aggressive system. Washington finished the regular season at 10-6. They defeated the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the wild card round, fueled by a defensive touchdown from Taylor. However, their playoff run ended in the divisional round against the Seattle, where the offense struggled against a tough Seattle defense. Despite the loss, the playoff appearance was Washington's first since 1999, and the season was widely seen as a success. That should keep Snyder at bay, right? The optimism from 2005 didn't carry into 2006. Injuries and inconsistency plagued the team. Mark Brunell struggled to replicate his previous season's success, and Gibbs eventually turned to Jason Campbell, the team's first-round pick in 2005, as the new starting quarterback. Campbell showed potential, but as a young quarterback, he faced the growing pains typical of the role. The defense, once the backbone of the team, regressed. Injuries to key players like Sean Springs and the lack of depth exposed vulnerabilities in Greg Williams' unit. Washington finished the season 5-11, raising questions about the direction of the team. Owner Dan Snyder took decisive actions in response to the team's struggles once again. He authorized substantial investments in free agency. He brought in high-profile players such as wide receiver Antoine Randall, defensive end Andre Carter, and safety Adam Archuleta. These moves are intended to bolster the roster and address key weaknesses, but I think it was already too late. Washington started the 2007 season inconsistently, to say the least. However, the team rallied late in the year after the devastating loss of Sean Taylor, who was tragically killed during a home invasion in November. Taylor's death rocked the franchise and the NFL community, but it also galvanized the team. Led by Jason Campbell and later backup quarterback Todd Collins, Washington won their first 4 games to finish 9-7 and secure a wild card spot. Santana Moss, Clinton Portis, and Chris Cooley played pivotal roles in the offense, while the defense, inspired by Taylor's memory, elevated their play. In the playoffs, Washington faced the Seattle once again in the wild card round. Despite a spirited effort, the team fell short, ending an emotional season on a bitter note. After the 2007 season, Joe Gibbs announced his retirement from coaching on January 8, 2008, and Snyder had to get his hands dirty again to find a new coach. Jim Zorn's time with Washington in 2008 and 2009 was one of the strangest and most chaotic coaching tenures in recent NFL history. Zorn was initially hired as Washington's offensive coordinator, but after a messy and lengthy search for a head coach, Dan Snyder ended up giving Zorn the main job. This was unconventional from the start. Most teams hired head coach first and then let him choose his own coordinators. By promoting Zorn, who had never been a head coach or even an offensive coordinator in the NFL before, Snyder effectively set him up to lead a team with limited experience and support. To everyone's surprise, Washington actually started strong in 2008 under Zorn, winning 6 of their first 8 games. Early on, it seemed like Snyder's gamble might pay off. Zorn's West Coast offense, which he learned under Mike Holmgren in Seattle, was fresh and looked promising, and Jason Campbell, the team's young quarterback, seemed comfortable in the system. However, the good times didn't last. As the season went on, defenses began to figure out Zorn's offense, and the team's lack of depth and conditioning started to show. Washington lost 6 of their last 8 games, finishing the season at 8-8 and missing the playoffs. The early promise of Zorn's system was quickly overshadowed by a collapse that left fans and players frustrated. One of the biggest issues was the inconsistent play of Campbell, who struggled with accuracy and decision-making down the stretch. Campbell threw for 3,245 yards with 13 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, but his lack of big plays and struggles in key moments were hard to ignore. Things went from bad to worse in 2009. Snyder brought in Sherman Lewis as an offensive consultant, a decision that completely undermined Zorn's authority. Lewis hadn't coached in years and was literally called out of retirement, where he was reportedly calling bingo games at a retirement community. Can you imagine that? In one of the most bizarre moves ever, Snyder had Lewis start calling the plays halfway through the season, effectively taking the offense out of Zorn's hands. This of course led to even more chaos. The team became the laughingstock of the league, and Zorn standing on the sidelines while another coach called plays for his own team. This honestly sounds like a plot of a comedy movie with Kevin Hart. The 2009 season ended with a dismal 4-12 record, and Zoran's brief tenure as head coach came to an end. During that year, Washington's offense ranked 22nd in the NFL, averaging just 16.6 points per game. Campbell's struggles continued as he threw for 3,618 yards with 20 touchdowns but 15 interceptions. The team had no real answers at running back, and their offensive line was falling apart. Zoran, who had once shown potential as a creative play caller, was now a coach seemingly defeated by Snyder's constant nose-sticking and the dysfunction within the organization. When Washington hired Mike Shanahan in 2010, there was finally some hope that the team had found a serious coach who could bring stability and a winning culture. Shanahan was already a two-time Super Bowl champion with the Denver Broncos and brought a reputation as a no-nonsense coach who could build strong offenses. Shanahan's first move was to try to stabilize the quarterback position, which had been a revolving door under Snyder. Washington traded for veteran Donovan McNabb, hoping it still had enough left in the tank to lead the offense. The cost wasn't cheap, as Washington sent a second-round pick and a conditional third or fourth-round pick to the Eagles for McNabb. But McNabb's time in Washington was a disaster. The former Pro Bowler looked well past his prime, struggling with accuracy and mobility. By the end of the 2010 season, McNabb was benched in favor of Rex Grossman, a sign of just how far things had fallen. Washington finished 6 for 10, and it was clear that the quarterback problem was far from solved. 2011 season wasn't much better, as Grossman and John Beck split time under center, neither performing well enough to secure the job. The team went 5-11, and the fans were losing patience with Shanahan's rebuild. But that all changed in 2012, when Washington made a bold move in the draft to select Robert Griffin III, the electrifying quarterback out of Baylor. Washington traded 3 first-round picks and a second-rounder to move up to the second overall pick, an enormous investment that showed just how badly Shanahan and the front office wanted a franchise quarterback. When Griffin took the field, it was immediately clear why they were so high on him. In 2012, RG3 brought in energy to Washington that fans hadn't seen in years. His speed, strong arm, and intelligence transformed the offense, and he quickly became one of the most exciting players in the NFL. Griffin threw for 3,200 yards with 20 touchdowns and just 5 interceptions, while rushing for another 815 yards and 7 touchdowns. Washington rode his playmaking ability to a 10-6 record and his first NEC East title since 1999. Griffin was named Offensive Rookie of the Year, and Washington looked like a team on the rise. However, the success came at a high cost. Griffin suffered a knee injury late in the season, but Shanahan decided to keep him in the lineup during Washington's wildcard playoff game against the Seattle. Griffin's knee buckled on a bad snap, resulting in a torn ACL and LCL. That injury changed everything for both Griffin and the franchise. Despite his grueling recovery, Griffin returned for the 2013 season, but he was clearly not the same player. He lost some of his speed and agility, which were critical to his playing style. Shanahan's offense, designed to utilize Griffin's mobility, didn't adapt well to the new limitations Griffin faced. Tension grew between Griffin, Shanahan, and the front office. Snyder reportedly had a close relationship with Griffin and was seen as an advocate for his return, which complicated things further. Washington's 2013 season was a nightmare, ending with a 3-13 record. Griffin's play was regressed, throwing to 16 touchdowns to 12 interceptions, while the team's defense struggled to keep games competitive. By the end of the year, it was clear that the situation was untenable. Shanahan was fired, and Griffin's career in Washington never truly recovered. The optimism from Griffin's rookie season had completely vanished, leaving the team in disarray. In retrospect, the RG3 era symbolizes both the high-risk, high-reward mentality that Snyder pursued and the pitfalls of mismanaging young talent. The team sacrificed significant draft capital for Griffin, only to see him sidelined by injuries and internal conflicts, all because the foundation of the team still was not built, almost 14 years later. In 2014, Snyder hired Jay Gruden, a coach known for his offensive mind, to bring some order to the franchise, and he found one hell of a star player right there on the Redskins bench. Kirk Cousins was drafted the same year as RG3, but had spent most of his time as a backup, waiting for his shot. When RG3 was benched due to injuries and performance issues, Cousins finally got his chance. Cousins was steady, if not spectacular, and in 2015, he delivered a breakout season, leading Washington to a 9-7 record and an NFC East title. Cousins threw for nearly 4,200 yards with 29 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. The team's fans rallied behind him, especially after his memorable "You like that?" moment after a comeback win against Tampa Bay. Washington made the playoffs, but fell to the Packers in the wild card round. For a franchise struggling for identity and consistency, Cousins' performance provided a glimmer of hope. However, it seems to me that Snyder wanted a true star quarterback like RG3 and didn't seem to fully commit to Cousins. Cousins played on back-to-back franchise tags in 2016 and 2017, making him the first quarterback in NFL history to play 2 consecutive seasons under the tag. By the way, the franchise tag came with a high cost. In 2017 alone, Washington paid Cousins $24 million. Yet, despite paying him top dollar, they refused to offer him a long-term contract. But in 2017, besides the huge check to Cousins, the team had bigger issues. Washington's defense was one of the worst in the league, and injuries plagued the offense. Cousins had another good season statistically, but Washington finished with a 7-9 record. By this point, it was clear that the team wasn't prepared to offer Cousins a long-term deal, and he left in free agency to sign a massive contract with the Minnesota Vikings. Why wouldn't they offer him a contract? Put your guesses in the comments. After Cousins left, Washington turned to another veteran, Alex Smith, trading away a 3rd-round pick and promising cornerback Kendall Fuller to the Kansas City Chiefs in exchange for him. Smith had been a consistent performer and a strong locker room presence. Early in the 2018 season, he led Washington to a 6-3 start, and it looked like the team might make a playoff run. But in Week 11, Smith suffered a catastrophic leg injury that threatened not just his career, but his life. The team unraveled, finishing the season 7-9 as they cycled through backup quarterbacks. In the years that followed, Washington became the NFL's version of a soap opera. The coaching staff and Snyder constantly found themselves at odds, with reports of dysfunction becoming routine. Bruce Allen, the team's president and one of Snyder's closest allies, famously claimed that the culture is actually damn good, despite widespread reports of mismanagement and low morale. Allen's comments obviously became an instant meme. Meanwhile, the team's record continued to reflect the chaos behind the scenes. In 2019, Jay Gruden's tenure came to an end after a dismal 0-5 start. Snyder fired him mid-season, leaving interim coach Bill Callahan to limp through the remainder of the year. Washington finished 3-13, their worst record since 2013. The 2019 season also marked the team's final year with the Redskins name, as mounting public and corporate pressure would soon force a change. 2020 marked one of the darkest periods for Washington's football team. Snyder's decisions over the year basically destroyed the franchise by that point. In July 2020, an explosive report by the Washington Post brought forward allegations from 15 former female employees who accused team executives of sexual harassment and verbal abuse over a span of many years. What made these revelations even more disturbing was that some of the alleged behavior came from high-ranking executives, including the team's director of pro personnel, Alex Santos, and assistant director of pro personnel, Richard Mann II. These two weren't minor figures in the organization. They were some of Snyder's top people, directly responsible for player acquisition and key front office activities. Despite the growing rumors and multiple internal complaints, Snyder's management team failed to act or address these issues adequately. As the fallout from the workplace misconduct allegations continued, Snyder attempted to take some corrective action without accepting personal responsibility. The organization hired Jason Wright as team president, making him the first black team president in NFL history. They also brought in Julie Donaldson as senior vice president of media, making her one of the highest-ranking female executives in the league. These moves were presented as steps toward a new progressive era for the franchise, one that would hopefully distance it from its recent past. But it was not just the team that was falling apart. FedEx Field, once a promising new home for Washington's storied football franchise, had become a symbol of Dan Snyder's mismanagement and a source of endless frustration. Built in 1997 with a seating capacity of over 91,000, it was at the time the largest stadium in the NFL. The capacity shrank dramatically over the years as Snyder struggled to maintain its quality. The once spacious seating saw over 20,000 seats removed by the mid-2010s, shrinking capacity to around 67,000 and giving the stadium an empty, lackluster feel. Those still attending had to endure visibly aging infrastructure, inadequate facilities, and unreliable amenities. It seems to me that over time, Snyder shifted from attempting to create a premium fan experience to simply keeping the lights on. Perhaps the most infamous moment came in 2021, when a railing at FedEx Field collapsed as fans were leaning over to greet Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts after a game. Several fans tumbled to the ground, narrowly avoiding serious injury, with Hurts himself helping some of them get up. Another major frustration was the field itself. Notorious for being one of the worst playing field surfaces in the NFL, the field conditions, combined with Washington's long list of on-field injuries, fed the perception that the franchise was cutting corners on players. The final blow to fan morale was Snyder's apparent reluctance to invest in a new stadium. While other teams were opening state-of-the-art venues or announcing plans for new stadiums, Snyder kept FedEx Field in the same poor condition. Simultaneously, the Washington team faced another pressure point: the ongoing controversy surrounding the team's name. For years, there had been calls to change the Redskins' name, as it was widely considered offensive toward Native Americans, but Snyder was famously resistant, once claiming he would never change it. However, 2020 was a different year. Amid nationwide protests over racial injustice, corporate sponsors began to take a stand, and FedEx, the title sponsor of the team stadium, publicly demanded a rebrand. Other major sponsors, including Nike and PepsiCo, followed suit, refusing to associate with the team unless it took action. In the face of such intense financial and public pressure, Snyder's once ironclad stance crumbled. In July 2020, the team announced it would retire the Redskins name, bringing an end to nearly 90 years of branding. Temporarily rebranding as the Washington football team, the franchise was put on a path toward finding a new identity. However, you cannot rebrand the team and expect change without doing the work. The years 2020 to 2022 saw a surge of scandals, lawsuits, and federal investigations targeting Dan Snyder and the Washington football team, now rebranded as the Washington Commanders. In December 2021, the House Committee released a report accusing Snyder of obstructing the NFL's initial investigation and withholding critical documents. The report claimed that the league had also contributed to the cover-up, citing the common interest agreement between the NFL and the Commanders that limited the scope of document disclosure. This further raised suspicions that the league was protecting Snyder. In February 2022, the NFL launched a second investigation, this time led by former U.S. Attorney Mary Jo White. Her task was to address unresolved questions from the Wilkinson investigation and explore any new issues raised by Congress. As a result, Snyder was fined $60 million by the NFL. In addition to the fine, the NFL released a 23-page report detailing the findings of the investigation. The report confirmed that Snyder allegedly had sexually harassed former employee Tiffany Johnson and that the team had withheld approximately $11 million in revenue that should have been shared with other NFL teams. These findings were made public on July 20th, 2023, coinciding with the NFL owners' unanimous approval of the sale of the Washington Commanders to the Josh Harris Group. This sale marked the end of Snyder's ownership of the team. Josh Harris Group included big names like former NBA star Magic Johnson and former CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt, who ultimately paid $6.05 billion, setting a new record for an American sports franchise. As of 2024, the Washington Commanders hold a 7-4 record and remain in playoff contention, currently occupying the 7th seed in the NFC. Their offense, led by rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels, has been a highlight this season, ranking among the top 5 in yards, points, and third down conversions. Will we see Washington in the playoffs in 2024 or only in 2025? Comment below and subscribe.